Introduction: The Outsider at Winterfell. Jon Snow's story begins in the north of Westeros, at a castle called Winterfell. Jon Snow's story begins in the north of Westeros, at a castle called Winterfell. He was introduced as the bastard son of Ned Stark, the Lord of Winterfell. He was introduced as the bastard son of Ned Stark, the Lord of Winterfell. In this world, a bastard is a child born to parents who are not married. In this world, a bastard is a child born to parents who are not married. This title defined his early life. This title defined his early life. While his father, Ned, loved him, Jon always felt like an outsider. While his father, Ned, loved him, Jon always felt like an outsider. He lived with his half-brothers and half-sisters, Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and Rickon. He lived with his half-brothers and half-sisters, Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, and Rickon. He had a close relationship with Arya and Robb, but Ned's wife, Catelyn Stark, did not like him. He had a close relationship with Arya and Robb, but Ned's wife, Catelyn Stark, did not like him. She saw him as a living reminder of her husband's infidelity. She saw him as a living reminder of her husband's infidelity. Jon was a quiet and serious young man. Jon was a quiet and serious young man. He often stood in the background while the legitimate Stark children received attention. He often stood in the background while the legitimate Stark children received attention. He wanted to find a place where his birth did not matter. He wanted to find a place where his birth did not matter. His uncle, Benjen Stark, was a member of the Night's Watch. His uncle, Benjen Stark, was a member of the Night's Watch. The Night's Watch was a military order that guarded the Wall, a massive barrier of ice that separated the Seven Kingdoms from the Wildlands to the north. The Night's Watch was a military order that guarded the Wall, a massive barrier of ice that separated the Seven Kingdoms from the Wildlands to the north. Benjen told Jon that on the Wall, a man gets what he earns, not what he inherits. Benjen told Jon that on the Wall, a man gets what he earns, not what he inherits. This idea appealed to Jon. This idea appealed to Jon. He decided to leave his home and family to join the Night's Watch. He decided to leave his home and family to join the Night's Watch. Before he left, he gave a small sword to his sister Arya. Before he left, he gave a small sword to his sister Arya. He named the sword, Needle. He named the sword, Needle. This moment showed his deep love for his family, even as he was leaving them. This moment showed his deep love for his family, even as he was leaving them. Chapter 1. Life at the Wall. Jon traveled north to the Wall. Jon traveled north to the Wall. However, he soon discovered that the Night's Watch was not the glorious order he imagined. However, he soon discovered that the Night's Watch was not the glorious order he imagined. It was not full of noble knights. It was not full of noble knights. Instead, it was full of criminals, thieves, and unwanted men. Instead, it was full of criminals, thieves, and unwanted men. Jon was trained by a cruel master named Alliser Thorne. Jon was trained by a cruel master named Alliser Thorne. Thorne hated Jon because Jon was better at fighting than everyone else. Thorne hated Jon because Jon was better at fighting than everyone else. Jon had been trained in a castle, while the other recruits were poor and untrained. Jon had been trained in a castle, while the other recruits were poor and untrained. At first, Jon was arrogant. At first, Jon was arrogant. He beat the other boys easily and did not make friends. He beat the other boys easily and did not make friends. Tyrion Lannister, a clever dwarf who was visiting the Wall, gave Jon some advice. Tyrion Lannister, a clever dwarf who was visiting the Wall, gave Jon some advice. He told Jon to help the other boys instead of showing off. He told Jon to help the other boys instead of showing off. Jon listened. Jon listened. He started to teach his fellow recruits how to fight. He started to teach his fellow recruits how to fight. He became friends with a boy named Samwell Tarly. He became friends with a boy named Samwell Tarly. Sam was fat, scared, and terrible at fighting, but he was very smart. Sam was fat, scared, and terrible at fighting, but he was very smart. Jon protected Sam from bullies. Jon protected Sam from bullies. This showed Jon's natural instinct to protect the weak. This showed Jon's natural instinct to protect the weak. When it was time to say their vows, Jon wanted to be a ranger, the men who go beyond the Wall to fight. When it was time to say their vows, Jon wanted to be a ranger, the men who go beyond the Wall to fight. However, he was assigned to be a steward, a servant to the Lord Commander, Jeor Mormont. However, he was assigned to be a steward, a servant to the Lord Commander, Jeor Mormont. John was angry, but Sam explained that Mormont wanted to groom John for command. John was angry, but Sam explained that Mormont wanted to groom John for command. John accepted his duty. John accepted his duty. One night, a dead body was brought into the castle. One night, a dead body was brought into the castle. The body came back to life with blue eyes. The body came back to life with blue eyes. It was a zombie created by the White Walkers. It was a zombie created by the White Walkers. The White tried to kill Lord Commander Mormont. The White tried to kill Lord Commander Mormont. John fought the creature and burned it with fire. John fought the creature and burned it with fire. He saved Mormont's life. He saved Mormont's life. As a reward, Mormont gave John a special sword made of Valyrian steel called Longclaw. As a reward, Mormont gave John a special sword made of Valyrian steel called Longclaw. This sword became John's primary weapon. This sword became John's primary weapon. Chapter 2. Into the Unknown. The Night's Watch went on a great ranging beyond the wall to find Benjen Stark and see why the wildlings were gathering. The Night's Watch went on a great ranging beyond the wall to find Benjen Stark and see why the wildlings were gathering. The wildlings are the free people who live north of the wall. The wildlings are the free people who live north of the wall. John joined a famous ranger named Corin Halfhand on a scouting mission. John joined a famous ranger named Corin Halfhand on a scouting mission. During this mission, they found a group of wildlings. During this mission, they found a group of wildlings. John was ordered to kill a female wildling named Wygreet. John was ordered to kill a female wildling named Wygreet. However, John could not do it. However, John could not do it. He had a good heart and could not kill a defenseless woman. He had a good heart and could not kill a defenseless woman. He let her go, but she later captured him. He let her go, but she later captured him. To survive, Corin Halfhand came up with a plan. To survive, Corin Halfhand came up with a plan. He told John to kill him. He told John to kill him. If John killed a brother of the Night's Watch, the wildlings would trust him. If John killed a brother of the Night's Watch, the wildlings would trust him. John did not want to do it, but he had no choice. John did not want to do it, but he had no choice. He killed the Halfhand and pretended to desert the Night's Watch. He killed the Halfhand and pretended to desert the Night's Watch. He was taken to Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall. He was taken to Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall. Mance was uniting all the wildling tribes to escape the White Walkers. Mance was uniting all the wildling tribes to escape the White Walkers. John acted as a spy. John acted as a spy. He walked with the wildlings and saw their way of life. He walked with the wildlings and saw their way of life. During this time, John fell in love with Wygreet. During this time, John fell in love with Wygreet. She was fierce, funny, and strong. She was fierce, funny, and strong. She often told him, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." She often told him, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." This phrase became very famous. This phrase became very famous. Wygreet taught John that wildlings were not monsters. Wygreet taught John that wildlings were not monsters. They were just people who wanted to be free. They were just people who wanted to be free. John broke his vows of celibacy with Wygreet. John broke his vows of celibacy with Wygreet. He was torn between his love for her and his duty to the Night's Watch. He was torn between his love for her and his duty to the Night's Watch. He knew that the wildlings planned to attack the wall, and he had to warn his brothers. He knew that the wildlings planned to attack the wall, and he had to warn his brothers. Chapter 3. The Battle for the Wall. Eventually, John escaped from the wildlings and returned to Castle Black. Eventually, John escaped from the wildlings and returned to Castle Black. He was injured and exhausted, but he warned the Night's Watch about the coming attack. He was injured and exhausted, but he warned the Night's Watch about the coming attack. Alliser Thorne did not trust John and wanted to execute him for being a traitor. Alliser Thorne did not trust John and wanted to execute him for being a traitor. However, Maester Aemon supported John. However, Maester Aemon supported John. The wildling army attacked the wall. The wildling army attacked the wall. It was a massive battle with giants and mammoths. It was a massive battle with giants and mammoths. John took command of the defense because the other leaders were scared or injured. John took command of the defense because the other leaders were scared or injured. He fought bravely on top of the wall and down in the castle courtyard. He fought bravely on top of the wall and down in the castle courtyard. During the battle, Wygritte shot arrows at the Night's Watch. During the battle, Wygritte shot arrows at the Night's Watch. She found John and pointed an arrow at his heart. She found John and pointed an arrow at his heart. She hesitated because she still loved him. She hesitated because she still loved him. While she paused, a young boy named Ollie shot her in the back. While she paused, a young boy named Ollie shot her in the back. Wygritte died in John's arms. Wygritte died in John's arms. It was a heartbreaking moment. It was a heartbreaking moment. John won the battle, but he lost the woman he loved. John won the battle, but he lost the woman he loved. The battle ended when Stannis Baratheon, a king from the south, arrived with his army. The battle ended when Stannis Baratheon, a king from the south, arrived with his army. Stannis defeated the Wildling army and captured Mance Rayder. Stannis defeated the Wildling army and captured Mance Rayder. Stannis respected Jon and offered to make him a legitimate Stark. Stannis respected Jon and offered to make him a legitimate Stark. He said Jon could be the Lord of Winterfell. He said Jon could be the Lord of Winterfell. This was everything Jon had ever wanted. This was everything Jon had ever wanted. But Jon refused. But Jon refused. He said his vows to the Night's Watch were for life. He said his vows to the Night's Watch were for life. He chose duty over his personal dreams. He chose duty over his personal dreams. Chapter 4. Lord Commander. The Night's Watch needed to elect a new Lord Commander. The Night's Watch needed to elect a new Lord Commander. With the help of Sam's speech, Jon was elected as the 998th Lord Commander. With the help of Sam's speech, Jon was elected as the 998th Lord Commander. It was a difficult position. It was a difficult position. The older officers, like Janos Slynt, did not respect him. The older officers, like Janos Slynt, did not respect him. When Slynt refused a direct order, Jon executed him. When Slynt refused a direct order, Jon executed him. This showed everyone that Jon was a strong leader who could make hard decisions. This showed everyone that Jon was a strong leader who could make hard decisions. Jon's biggest challenge was the Wildlings. Jon's biggest challenge was the Wildlings. He knew the White Walkers were coming, and if the Wildlings died north of the Wall, they would become zombies in the Night King's army. He knew the White Walkers were coming, and if the Wildlings died north of the Wall, they would become zombies in the Night King's army. Jon decided to let the Wildlings come through the wall to safety. Jon decided to let the Wildlings come through the wall to safety. This was a very unpopular decision. This was a very unpopular decision. For thousands of years, the Night's Watch had fought the Wildlings. For thousands of years, the Night's Watch had fought the Wildlings. Many of Jon's brothers hated him for this. Many of Jon's brothers hated him for this. They called him a Wildling lover. They called him a Wildling lover. Jon traveled to a place called Hardhome to rescue the remaining Wildlings. Jon traveled to a place called Hardhome to rescue the remaining Wildlings. While he was there, the Night King attacked. While he was there, the Night King attacked. It was a massacre. It was a massacre. Jon fought a White Walker general and discovered that his Valyrian steel sword could kill them. Jon fought a White Walker general and discovered that his Valyrian steel sword could kill them. He managed to save thousands of people, but he watched in horror as the Night King raised thousands of dead bodies to join his army. He managed to save thousands of people, but he watched in horror as the Night King raised thousands of dead bodies to join his army. Jon realized the true war was not between humans, but between the living and the dead. Jon realized the true war was not between humans, but between the living and the dead. Chapter 5. Betrayal and Rebirth. When Jon returned to Castle Black, the tension was high. When Jon returned to Castle Black, the tension was high. A group of officers, including Alliser Thorne and the boy Ollie, decided to betray him. A group of officers, including Alliser Thorne and the boy Ollie, decided to betray him. They tricked Jon into coming outside. They tricked Jon into coming outside. One by one, they stabbed him in the stomach. One by one, they stabbed him in the stomach. They said, "For the Watch." They said, "For the Watch." Jon fell into the snow and died. Jon fell into the snow and died. However, this was not the end. However, this was not the end. A red priestess named Melisandre was at the wall. A red priestess named Melisandre was at the wall. She believed Jon was special. She believed Jon was special. She performed a magic ritual to ask the Lord of Light to bring him back. She performed a magic ritual to ask the Lord of Light to bring him back. At first, it seemed to fail. At first, it seemed to fail. But after everyone left the room, Jon gasped and opened his eyes. But after everyone left the room, Jon gasped and opened his eyes. He was alive again. He was alive again. Jon executed the men who murdered him. Jon executed the men who murdered him. After that, he gave his cloak to his friend Ed. After that, he gave his cloak to his friend Ed. He said, "My watch is ended." He said, "My watch is ended." The vows said he served until death. The vows said he served until death. Since he had died, he was technically free. Since he had died, he was technically free. He left the Night's Watch. He left the Night's Watch. Chapter 6. The Battle of the Bastards. Jon reunited with his sister Sansa Stark, who had escaped from her abusive husband, Ramsay Bolton. Jon reunited with his sister Sansa Stark, who had escaped from her abusive husband, Ramsay Bolton. Ramsay had taken control of Winterfell. Ramsay had taken control of Winterfell. Sansa convinced Jon that they had to fight Ramsay to take back their home and save their brother Rickon. Sansa convinced Jon that they had to fight Ramsay to take back their home and save their brother Rickon. Jon and Sansa gathered an army. Jon and Sansa gathered an army. It was not a very big army. It was not a very big army. They had the wildlings and a few small houses from the north. They had the wildlings and a few small houses from the north. Ramsay had a much larger force. Ramsay had a much larger force. The two armies met on a field. The two armies met on a field. Ramsay played a cruel game. Ramsay played a cruel game. He released Rickon and told him to run to Jon. He released Rickon and told him to run to Jon. As Rickon ran, Ramsay shot arrows at him. As Rickon ran, Ramsay shot arrows at him. Jon rode his horse fast to save his brother, but Rickon was killed right before Jon reached him. Jon rode his horse fast to save his brother, but Rickon was killed right before Jon reached him. Jon was furious. Jon was furious. He charged at the Bolton army alone. He charged at the Bolton army alone. His own army had to follow him into a trap. His own army had to follow him into a trap. It was a chaotic and bloody battle. It was a chaotic and bloody battle. Jon was almost crushed to death by his own men. Jon was almost crushed to death by his own men. He struggled to breathe. He struggled to breathe. Just when all hope seemed lost, the Knights of the Vale arrived. Just when all hope seemed lost, the Knights of the Vale arrived. Sansa had asked for their help. Sansa had asked for their help. They defeated Ramsay's army. They defeated Ramsay's army. Jon beat Ramsay with his fists but let Sansa decide his fate. Jon beat Ramsay with his fists but let Sansa decide his fate. The Starks took back Winterfell. The Starks took back Winterfell. The Northern Lords declared Jon the king in the north, even though he was a bastard. The Northern Lords declared Jon the king in the north, even though he was a bastard. They respected his courage and his blood. They respected his courage and his blood. Chapter 7. Fire and Ice. Jon knew the White Walkers were still coming. Jon knew the White Walkers were still coming. He needed powerful allies. He needed powerful allies. He received a message from Daenerys Targaryen, the Dragon Queen. He received a message from Daenerys Targaryen, the Dragon Queen. She had arrived in Westeros with 3 dragons and a massive army. She had arrived in Westeros with 3 dragons and a massive army. Jon traveled to Dragonstone to meet her. Jon traveled to Dragonstone to meet her. At first, they did not get along. At first, they did not get along. Daenerys wanted Jon to bend the knee and accept her as his queen. Daenerys wanted Jon to bend the knee and accept her as his queen. Jon refused. Jon refused. He said his people would not accept a southern ruler. He said his people would not accept a southern ruler. He only cared about the war against the dead. He only cared about the war against the dead. He asked her for dragonglass, a material that can kill White Walkers. He asked her for dragonglass, a material that can kill White Walkers. She agreed to let him mine it. She agreed to let him mine it. Over time, they gained respect for each other. Over time, they gained respect for each other. Jon saw her good heart, and she saw his bravery. Jon saw her good heart, and she saw his bravery. Jon decided to go on a dangerous mission beyond the wall. Jon decided to go on a dangerous mission beyond the wall. He wanted to capture a white to show Queen Cersei Lannister, the ruler in the South, that the threat was real. He wanted to capture a white to show Queen Cersei Lannister, the ruler in the South, that the threat was real. He went with a small group of warriors. He went with a small group of warriors. They were surrounded by the army of the dead. They were surrounded by the army of the dead. Daenerys flew her dragons to save them. Daenerys flew her dragons to save them. She rescued the group, but the Night King killed one of her dragons with an ice spear. She rescued the group, but the Night King killed one of her dragons with an ice spear. Jon was heartbroken for her loss. Jon was heartbroken for her loss. He saw her sacrifice and decided to pledge his loyalty to her. He saw her sacrifice and decided to pledge his loyalty to her. He called her, my queen. He called her, my queen. On the boat journey back, Jon and Daenerys fell in love. On the boat journey back, Jon and Daenerys fell in love. They slept together. They slept together. However, they did not know a massive secret. However, they did not know a massive secret. Sam Tarly and Bran Stark discovered the truth about Jon's parents. Sam Tarly and Bran Stark discovered the truth about Jon's parents. Jon was not Ned Stark's bastard. Jon was not Ned Stark's bastard. He was actually the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. He was actually the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. His real name was Aegon Targaryen. His real name was Aegon Targaryen. He was the true heir to the Iron Throne, and Daenerys was actually his aunt. He was the true heir to the Iron Throne, and Daenerys was actually his aunt. Chapter 8. The Long Night. Jon and Daenerys arrived at Winterfell to fight the dead. Jon and Daenerys arrived at Winterfell to fight the dead. The truth about Jon's parents was revealed to him. The truth about Jon's parents was revealed to him. He was shocked. He was shocked. He told Daenerys, and she was worried. He told Daenerys, and she was worried. She knew that if people found out, they would want Jon to be king instead of her. She knew that if people found out, they would want Jon to be king instead of her. The army of the dead arrived at Winterfell. The army of the dead arrived at Winterfell. It was a terrifying night. It was a terrifying night. Jon rode a dragon named Rhaegal and fought in the sky against the Night King. Jon rode a dragon named Rhaegal and fought in the sky against the Night King. He tried to reach Bran to protect him but was pinned down by a dragon made of ice. He tried to reach Bran to protect him but was pinned down by a dragon made of ice. In the end, it was Arya Stark who killed the Night King. In the end, it was Arya Stark who killed the Night King. The army of the dead shattered. The army of the dead shattered. The war for life was won. The war for life was won. The survivors celebrated, but the political war was not over. The survivors celebrated, but the political war was not over. Daenerys wanted to take the Iron Throne from Cersei. Daenerys wanted to take the Iron Throne from Cersei. Jon supported her, but he saw that she was becoming unstable. Jon supported her, but he saw that she was becoming unstable. She was losing her friends and felt unloved in the North. She was losing her friends and felt unloved in the North. People loved Jon more, and this made her jealous and paranoid. People loved Jon more, and this made her jealous and paranoid. Chapter 9. The Bells and the End. They marched south to King's Landing. They marched south to King's Landing. Jon led the northern armies. Jon led the northern armies. Daenerys attacked the city with her last dragon. Daenerys attacked the city with her last dragon. The city surrendered, and bells rang to signal peace. The city surrendered, and bells rang to signal peace. But Daenerys was full of rage. But Daenerys was full of rage. She did not stop. She did not stop. She burned the city to the ground, killing thousands of innocent men, women, and children. She burned the city to the ground, killing thousands of innocent men, women, and children. Jon watched from the streets in horror. Jon watched from the streets in horror. He tried to stop his men from killing innocents, but it was chaos. He tried to stop his men from killing innocents, but it was chaos. After the battle, Daenerys gave a speech. After the battle, Daenerys gave a speech. She said she would liberate the whole world in the same way. She said she would liberate the whole world in the same way. Tyrion Lannister was taken prisoner for treason. Tyrion Lannister was taken prisoner for treason. He told Jon that Daenerys would never stop killing. He told Jon that Daenerys would never stop killing. He said Jon was the only one who could protect the people. He said Jon was the only one who could protect the people. Jon went to the throne room. Jon went to the throne room. He found Daenerys looking at the Iron Throne. He found Daenerys looking at the Iron Throne. She asked him to rule with her. She asked him to rule with her. She believed she was making a paradise. She believed she was making a paradise. Jon realized she was lost. Jon realized she was lost. He said, "You are my queen, now and always." He said, "You are my queen, now and always." Then, he kissed her and stabbed her in the heart. Then, he kissed her and stabbed her in the heart. She died in his arms. She died in his arms. Jon cried. Jon cried. He did not want power. He only did it to save the world from her tyranny. He did not want power. He only did it to save the world from her tyranny. Conclusion: The exile. After killing the queen, Jon was taken prisoner by her army. After killing the queen, Jon was taken prisoner by her army. The leaders of Westeros met to decide his fate. The leaders of Westeros met to decide his fate. They could not free him because Daenerys's followers wanted justice. They could not free him because Daenerys's followers wanted justice. They could not kill him because the Starks would start a war. They could not kill him because the Starks would start a war. They reached a compromise. They reached a compromise. Jon was sentenced to rejoin the Night's Watch. Jon was sentenced to rejoin the Night's Watch. He would take no wife and hold no lands. He would take no wife and hold no lands. He returned to Castle Black. He returned to Castle Black. There, he reunited with his direwolf, Ghost. There, he reunited with his direwolf, Ghost. But Jon did not stay at the wall. But Jon did not stay at the wall. The wildlings were returning to their true home in the far north. The wildlings were returning to their true home in the far north. Jon went with them. Jon went with them. The final scene of his story shows him riding into the forest with the free folk. The final scene of his story shows him riding into the forest with the free folk. He looked back at the wall, the place that had defined his life, and then looked forward. He looked back at the wall, the place that had defined his life, and then looked forward. He was no longer a bastard, a commander, or a king. He was no longer a bastard, a commander, or a king. He was finally free. He was finally free. He had saved the world, but his reward was a quiet life in the place where he truly belonged. He had saved the world, but his reward was a quiet life in the place where he truly belonged. His journey taught us that being a hero often means making terrible sacrifices, and that true leadership is about duty, not power. His journey taught us that being a hero often means making terrible sacrifices, and that true leadership is about duty, not power.